I don't know how many of you actually watched the budget on the television or via the internet yesterday, and I'm not asking for a show of hands. I can reveal, it shames me to do so. It doesn't shame me to say I did watch it, because I did watch it. I did watch it. It shames me to say I had grown accustomed not to watching the previous budgets by the previous government. And why did I not bother watching them? Simply because most of what was said had already been trailed quite liberally. You would have a pre-budget announcement before the budget, at which point matters would be iterated, reiterated, and you just had an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. Yesterday, I felt more a sense of history. You know, call me old-fashioned, but I sort of sense that it was a budget that, you know, we'll think about and talk about for the years to come. I mean, I'm not quite old enough to remember the last coalition government. I'm not quite old enough to remember a budget delivered by a coalition government, but I'm old enough, obviously, to remember yesterday. And I'm old enough, I hasten to say, to remember budgets done in '77 by Denis Healey. I'm old enough to remember Geoffrey Howe's budget of '79 after Thatcher got in, when income tax was cut from the top end 98% to a mere 75%, and everybody thought, wow, this is the way forward. I'm old enough to remember Nigel Lawson's budget of '88, when income tax was cut to 40%, and everybody thought, Christ, this is it, we're all rich, this is fantastic. So you remember the tax cutting budgets quite well. I remember the first Brown budget, 97, where he rattled through his agenda in a business-like manner, told us about the windfall tax, told us about his raid on the pension funds, told us it would all be all right and that boom and bust was now a thing of the past, and he was right there. We seem to have got rid of boom. But yesterday's I think we'll think about. And there were a few nice moments that struck a chord with me. A nice moment was, I thought, Christ, aren't they young? Young George Osborne up there doing his stuff with a certain amount of aplomb. I think he delivered very well. And next to him was Nick Clegg, who looks very young, and next to him was Danny Alexander, who doesn't only look young, but is young. And they're at the front bench, and you think, my God, they're young. Then they pan away to poor old David Cameron, who looks positively ancient compared to them at the ripe old age of 42 or whatever it is. You think, my God, they're all so young. The sound bite that I liked most of all was the comment by George Osborne that we are where we are now, not because we have been under-taxed, but because we have overspent. And I thought, well, that is a really, really good point. I must remember to stand on my hind legs tomorrow and actually say that. And why is that important? It's important because what we witnessed yesterday, what you're about to hear from me, features tax increases. There is no doubt about it. The bigger feature of what was said yesterday, and about which you're not going to hear quite so much from me, i.e. almost nothing, because I do tax, is the cuts to public expenditure. Those were the two key areas: spending down, tax up. But do not forget, please do not forget, that these tax increases are taking place from a background of high taxes. Who can forget, I don't know, perhaps some people can't quite remember the various stealth taxes perpetrated by the last government. I'm old enough to remember when, if you got a notice of coding, it had a string of numbers in it, which added up to a big number at the bottom, which was positive. There were allowances, and all right, there were a few deductions from allowances, but you had allowances. There was positive allowances. Now you get a notice of coding, and it starts with a very small number from which very big deductions are made, and the bottom number is a very big one, but it's got a minus sign in front of it. You get negative codes now, K codes, and that was all part of the stealth tax model that Gordon Brown loved so much. George Osborne, give him his due, there was nothing stealthy about the tax increases. They were all blatantly put before us. He was slightly disingenuous when he said everything in the budget is going to be in the speech, nothing is going to be in the small print, because what happens, of course, one goes back to one's desk, one clicks on the Treasury website, and what do you get? Well, you get a load of small print, basically, depending on whether you print it on double-sided pages or on pages in two halves, you get bloody loads of it. So there's a lot of small print, but most of what he said was in the budget. So, without further ado, let's get cracking. Now, just to set the scene, to sort of continue on the theme I've started about we are starting from a high tax position, let's remind ourselves how we got here. And yes, I could go back. I'm old enough to go back loads and loads of years. I could go back to the 70s and regale you with what Dennis Healey did, but I won't. I will take you back a mere 15 months to the budget of 2009, which was on the 22nd of April 2009. There you go. And what happened there? Well, what happened there was swinging tax increases, which we have got now. The old Labour government used to like to announce things that would take place in the future, but damn it, the future is here. It's upon us. So what is upon us? We have the 50% rate of income tax for high earners, as defined, high being £150,000 a year. We have the concept that if you are a not so high earner, you don't get your personal allowance. And a lot of yesterday's talk was about increasing the personal allowance. And guess what, chaps? You don't get it at all if you're a high earner, as defined, but you don't get the benefit of it even if you're a relatively modest earner. So some of these headline increases are only headlines. But we've got that already. What else have we got already? We've got the rules on pensions. That was announced in April 2009. The rules under which if you make a pension contribution and you are a high earner as defined, again, 150,000, you don't get proper tax relief on it. Those rules are still with us. Bit of talk about that yesterday. We'll come to that in a moment. What else was April 2009 about? We were told national insurance was going to go up. We were told national insurance was going to go up, but from a point in the future. What was that point in the future? It was April 2011. Well, we've still got all that. That's the background that we're operating under. So that was the headlines of then. What did we then have? We had the pre-budget report. What happened? Lots of reiteration. But the headline grabbing announcement in that report was the banker's tax. The bankers are to blame for everything, so let's tax them. Don't give them bonuses and all that. We then had the budget in March 2010. What was the key feature of that? The key feature of that was that there were no key features. The key feature of that was that, oh my God, we've heard it all before. I had people walking out of this seminar in March 2010 on the grounds that, yeah, there's not much new in this, we're off. And they were right, there was not much new in it. There was not much new in it. And why wasn't there? Because everybody knew that there was an election looming. And so what happened next? The election came and went.